Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. My name is Janet Sandberg. I am your host, and today we are joined by the lovely Violet Detre. I forgot to ask her name. I do that all the time. I hope I said that correctly.
You did very well. Yes, Detre. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Violet, tell us a little bit about yourself to start us off.
I'm a prior military spouse. My husband just retired right before the pandemic. So we've lived in various places like Colorado and Germany, Florida, and now we're back in my home state of Texas. We've been married 27 years. We're now happily married. It's been a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're kid free. And personally, I've been an entrepreneur at heart for a while. And, I wrote some books and I'm just interested in different entrepreneurial journeys, real estate investing, YouTube, different things. And also, I studied to be a coach.
Awesome. Amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, we'll get into all of that later. Um, let's just start with your story. You have an interesting story from the little bits that I know of it. So let's go back to the beginning and tell us what life was like when you decided, or you didn't decide because you're still here, but you thought that perhaps you didn't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, it was a really dark time that came along because of choices that I had made, and I didn't realize that back then.
Mhm.
Hindsight is 2020, and you get so much clarity
Yes.
afterwards, after you have the breakthrough, after you already have some freedom. And for me, there was some childhood trauma that I experienced. My great uncle molested me, and I think that was the beginning of because my parents really wanted children. There
Mhm.
was like something huge on their heart, and the doctor had actually told them that they couldn't have children.
Oh,
But here I came.
wow.
so
Miracle
you can,
baby.
yeah, so you can just imagine how excited my parents were. Very loving parents, not perfect, of course, but I think that was when everything shifted, is when I had that experience, and then I
Yeah,
tried to protect myself. Um,
absolutely. Mhm.
shut down my emotions, build a wall. It's kind of like I see it.
Mhm.
I built this strong wall to try to keep evil from coming in, but because I did that, I also didn't let the good stuff come in.
Right.
And life began to be scary. I also grew up in the Christian church, but it was more fear based.
Mm.
Now, my thoughts have totally shifted. God has shown me a different way of how He is, of who I am, of how to live, of how to enjoy life. But growing up, it wasn't like that. My parents were very protective. So they said no a lot
Mm.
because,
Mhm.
out of fear, out of overprotectiveness. So that's how I saw the world. I saw the world as scary and fearful. And even though I was a good student, that was my refuge. Going to
Yeah.
school, I had the boundaries. People told me what to do. They had, hey, if you do these things, check the boxes, you get the good grades and you get
Yeah.
praised. And so I knew what to do. But once
Yeah.
I graduated, I was like, "Oh my goodness, I have no one here to guide me, no one here to tell me exactly what to do, no one to tell me the steps." And I felt like I kept failing and
Mhm.
nothing was working out the way I expected. So then it was about 13 years ago that my husband came home earlier from work than I expected because as a soldier, he's on call basically 24/7 and he would come home late from work. But this time he heard something in his gut telling him, "Hey, you gotta get home." So when he got home, he found me on the living room floor. He said that I was cold, unconscious, and my skin was even gray at that time.
Oh,
But he rushed me to the ER and they were able to bring me back to life.
wow.
So that is. kind of the big overall journey, kind of the big picture of my journey.
Right. So how were um when you made that attempt, what was going through your mind?
Wow. I felt basically hopeless. Once you lose hope, that's it.
Mhm.
And so that was like the final straw. But some of the struggles that I had been going through was I prayed for my grandfather for him to be healed. And I felt at peace. I felt that God had told me he was going to be healed.
Okay.
And then, a couple of weeks later, he was gone. And I didn't even get the chance to say goodbye.
Oh,
So I felt like God let me down or I missed it. And it if I didn't have my faith, what else did I have? And
right.
then I had a lot of health issues. And I think also stemmed from the molestation. I had,
Yeah.
stomach issues, keeping all those emotions inside, not being able to process them properly, not being
Mhm.
able to talk about it. Um, so plus I had braces and mercury in my teeth.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I finally found a naturopathic doctor that explained all this stuff to me, and
Mhm.
he said that that caused an exponential. So it wasn't just like this plus this. It was this to the X power. So it went like
Yeah.
there was heavy metal toxicity. The way that I was eating was just not feeding my body, not nourishing my body. And then I felt like a failure. I felt like I was a burden to everybody because
Mm.
I wasn't contributing to society. Nothing was working out. I lost my identity because my identity was good student, A plus, winning at
Yeah.
life.
Right?
And it was totally gone, especially because I experienced brain fog. I remember when we were living in Germany, I invited my sister to come over. My brother and sister came over and we had this really fun exploring Europe
Yeah.
trip. And my sister had asked me, "Oh," she calls me Violeta because that's my birth name. "Oh, Violeta, do you remember this and this and this and this from yesterday?" And I was like, "No, really? This and this happened around this time, and then we did that, and it was just yesterday."
Wow.
I didn't remember anything, so that scared me. I felt like my brain was turning into like Swiss cheese.
Mhm.
I didn't know what was going on. Now I understand it. But at that time, it was pretty scary. And I said, if my brain's not working, life is not working, I'm just a burden to everybody.
Faith is not working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, in the Christian church, the way that they encourage you is, oh, when we go to heaven, we won't have to worry about that. Oh, when we go to heaven, it'll be awesome. That's
Oh,
their answer to to a lot of things.
yeah.
But I found out that you can actually have joy here. In the Bible, it says, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living.
Yes.
And once God revealed that to me, and there was so much stuff that, He just transformed my life because now I live a more joy filled life.
Mhm.
But, back then it was all these lies that I was believing.
Mhm.
I said, this is the only way out.
Yeah.
And let me just skip to the good part.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it all makes so much sense. Yeah. So after you healed from that, you were in the hospital for a bit, you came home, and then what happened after that?
Well, I wish it was an immediate turnaround.
Mm.
And I thought it was going to be because my backup plan, since that wasn't my first attempt. I
Oh,
had multiple attempts, first as a teenager and then something would break the camel's back. And I would be like, no, this is my only answer right now to get
right,
out of this pain.
right.
I saw that as my only option. And it hadn't worked out. And I said, "Well, this time I think I have it right. I have all the details right. But if it doesn't work out, I'm going to go back to university and finish my degree because that's where I feel safe.
Mhm.
But I put myself through trauma. So that that was not physically possible.
Right.
And I was still trying to figure things out. So I was hanging around with the wrong crowd because they accepted me.
Right.
But what I realized there was, and this is kind of what you shared at the beginning, that your show is about no judgment. And that was such a huge help to me because sometimes in these churches, especially if they're a religious church, which there's a difference. I found out there was a difference between going to church to be religious and actually having a relationship with God.
Yes.
And I grew up kind of in the religious part of the church. So sometimes or often you can get judged and you're not supposed to wear this or do that.
Yeah.
And you feel like you can't be yourself.
Mhm.
But with these people, I could be myself. And then in there was a lot of tripping and falling still, but I started having grace with myself because I had people that were supporting me even
Right.
though I was in, like, I call it the muck and the mire. Um and when I realized that they didn't have the answers and they actually needed answers that I could give them if I totally gave myself back to God and started, you know, growing in my faith again. So after that, then God started speaking to me about unconditional love.
Mhm.
I said, and He told me, whether you do something, like if I'm telling you to do something and you obey me, or you don't do it at all, I love you and I can't love you anymore and I won't love you any less. And that, like, that took such a burden off of me. I
Yeah.
didn't have to be perfect. I didn't have to get
What?
it all right.
Crazy.
And, that was because of that wall also. I closed myself off to love. Still,
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I'm growing in is how to open myself to love and being able to trust again. And but that was a big, like, spark helping me to know that I am unconditionally loved no matter what I do. So those were two big things. And also something else that I found out when I was hanging around with the wrong crowd, um, was this funny feeling that made me feel so good. Oh my goodness, what is that? I'm feeling happy. I
What?
was I was so, like, uptight, having to, try to be perfect all the time and getting everything right, and I didn't let myself feel happy.
Mhm.
Somehow I didn't give myself permission to be happy. I had to be perfect.
Yeah.
And once I started having that feeling, I said, "Hey, I want more of this. And wow, this is actually good for you. Oh my gosh, God even says in the Bible, rejoice, rejoice." Again, I say rejoice like He said it so many times, it must be important.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy how perfectionism can just take over. Like we do it out of, fear and anxiety. And if we control everything and everything is perfect and everything is going, we feel like we're going to do better. Right. But in reality, it just holds us back and keeps us from experiencing happiness and joy and love and all of those good things because we're so regimented and we're not allowing ourselves to just be.
Yeah, like I could finally breathe.
Yeah.
But logically, in my logical mind, if I have the control, if
Mhm.
I have everything perfect, I won't experience pain anymore.
Right.
I'll be safe.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And that Yeah, it makes sense to some part of our brain, but
Right?
so how did you get over that? What did you do to get past all the perfection? Because that's not easy.
Yeah, well, I kind of had to because I couldn't function. My Because of all the health issues and everything, even negative emotions, getting upset, it would just wear me out. I would just have to go to bed and go to sleep because
Mm,
it just affected my body so bad.
right.
And then I found a naturopathic doctor who actually gave me hope because basically was living at the hospital, I feel like,
Oh, no.
trying to find out what was wrong with me.
Right.
Like I said, my brain fog, I couldn't think straight, and I was having pain all over my body. I could barely walk two blocks without extreme pain. They put me on all this medication. They tested me for all these things. They said nothing was wrong with me. They accused me of being a hypochondriac.
Of course they did. Yeah.
And I said, something has to, I'm not feeling good. Something has to be wrong with me.
Yeah.
But then my naturopathic doctor said, oh, I know exactly what's going on. It's this and this and this and this.
Oh, we're having a little bit of Zoom trouble, and hopefully Violet will be back in a minute. And yeah, I'm really
Try to
enjoying.
get better. Oh, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
you
Is
froze
it,
for a
did
minute.
I
So
freeze?
yeah,
Am I back?
you're back. You're back.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
well, I remember that cancer patients, um, they practice positivity
mhm.
and that helps them to get better. And I said, well, positivity's feeling good. Let me gear on that side. Let me try to find ways to be more positive.
Yeah. Yeah. How? What sorts of things did you do?
Well, first, like I said, I couldn't really do much.
Mhm.
But I had grace with myself. I said, God loves me unconditionally. It's okay if I don't have the energy to take a shower for a whole week.
Mhm.
It's okay that I'm not going to be taking 3 hours to get ready every day just to have my every single lash perfectly distanced from the other one. And I would go out with greasy hair, not totally beautified. And people at the grocery store, they treated me like a person.
Mhm.
So that was more acceptance.
Right.
Like I said, why am I trying so hard to impress all these people? And so that another layer came off.
Mhm.
And let's see, how do I help myself do self care, start feeling more happiness in my life? Well, the doctor recommends sun and going out and getting fresh air, and the sand and beach make me feel nice. So let's start going to the beach more
Right.
and just doing things that really made me feel good and practicing that. It just helped me to it just piled on the joy, piled on the happiness, which strengthened my spirit, strengthened my body, strengthened different parts of me. So sometimes joy is a muscle, I found out.
It is.
And then after I was doing research and I wrote my first book, I found out that we have, I think it's 6 happy neurotransmitters or happy hormones,
Mhm.
which are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, GABA, and norepinephrine. And
Okay.
what I was doing, those self-care practices were actually engaging those happy hormones.
Oh.
Things like
Yeah.
taking a breath, things like taking a walk, things like appreciating nature,
Yep.
and, watching something funny, laughing,
Yeah. Yeah.
simple
I
things
saw
like that.
I saw something somewhere, probably just floating around social media, that, they sort of broke it down. I don't think they had that many. There were maybe 4 of those. But they're like, here's some things you can do that'll give you a dopamine hit. Here's some things that will do that will give you a serotonin hit. Here's some things that will give you oxytocin. Like, crossing something off a list that you got done, feeds one of those receptors, and giving somebody a hug feeds another one. And so the more you can incorporate those things in, the more feel good hormones we produce. And then, of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
we feel better.
Yeah. And
Mm.
it's like Carolyn Leaf. I don't know if you're familiar with her,
Mm-mm.
but she talks about detoxing your brain and how you can have a healthy brain or you can have these ugly trees that are not being resourceful to you.
Hmm.
And the healthy happiness habits, I call them, or joy strategies that I was doing, it was helping those dead old trees that weren't serving me to die, and then the happy, fruitful, green trees to grow. So those started to take over. And, you know, for me, I think it was God that He started just revealing to me more and more things about in His Word how He wants us to be joyful. He wants us to have an abundant life and that we can.
Mm-hmm. If we allow ourselves to, yeah.
And the more I focused on joy and on happiness, the more downloads I got. So I wrote a second book about 52 ways to do business and life in joy.
Amazing. I love that. I love that. Yeah, and it's hard. It's change. It's changing your habits, doing things differently. And of course, our brains don't like to do things differently because our brain likes things to be very, very comfortable. And, change is scary, right? So it's not just like you said, I like going to the beach. The beach makes me feel good. I'm going to do more of that. But then we've got our whole brain, even though going to the beach is a really good thing, like, oh, but I have to do laundry, or oh, but I have all these other things to do. And we don't even allow ourselves that joyful thing because for no good reason, really. So it's just like, okay. And you have to, at the beginning, just plan joy into your calendar, which sounds so counterintuitive.
Yeah,
But you really do. You have, okay, tomorrow afternoon, I am, taking 2 hours and I'm going to the beach. Or tomorrow I'm, schedule whatever in.
why
That
wait till
makes you feel good.
tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, because people, when you get in that, oh, I have all these things to do today, right? So it's like, okay, we'll put it in the calendar for tomorrow.
Yeah, what I encourage people to do is having a joy alarm.
Hmm.
And I found out that at certain periods of the day, I start feeling in a little slump. It
Hmm.
happens around 3 or 3:30 when
Yep.
my body's just like, "Grr." So at that time, I set a joy alarm. So every day it goes off and has this funny minion song. So it changes my state
Uh-huh.
at that point. And then the alarm reminds me to ask myself, Violet, what have you done today to bring you joy?
Oh, I love that.
And it's good to have a joy list, or you can even get those popsicle sticks and write one thing that brings you joy every day. Have a whole bunch of those in a jar.
Mhm.
So when you do need a little pick me up, you could just pick one of those and okay, let me try this today.
I love that. I love that. Um, I have a book called Joyful. Have you read that?
Who is it by?
I gotta look. Hold on. It is by Ingrid Fattel Lee. And I actually saw her TED Talk. And then she had a book come out afterwards. And it's like the science of joy.
Hmm.
And there's a number of different things that you can incorporate into your life that are sort of scientifically proven to increase joy where you wouldn't really think of it. Like round shapes make us happier than shapes with corners. Um, Looking up, like into the sky, into the horizon, um, being able to see a distance, that makes us happy. Um, like it's all these like weird, quirky things that you're like, okay. But if you start incorporating, so if you're picking a design, pick polka dots, not stripes, into your clothing and colors and all kinds of stuff. And it's yeah, it's amazing. It's
And
so interesting.
I'm sure that has a lot of merit, and I would love to try some of those things. But for me, it's like, how can I make this joyful? Whatever
Mhm.
this neutral event is happening in my life, how can I make this fun, joyful, positive, reframe this in a certain way?
Yes.
Like, instead of even your thoughts are super important because your thoughts are things,
Mhm.
and what we think really affects our emotions, and then our emotions affect our behavior. So, yeah, that's one of the things that I try to do is just challenge my thought. And then if it's not going to serve me, then just cancel it and say, how can I approach this in a positive way? Because that'll help me. That'll bring something out of me that is more helpful than me saying, well, I don't like stripes. So let me just,
Yeah.
you know, and like I said, I'm sure there's a merit to what she's saying. Um, But then what if there's no shirts with stripes? What are you gonna I mean, no shirts with circles. What are you gonna
Right.
do?
Well, it's more of a long-term strategy, right? Like as you
Right.
are incorporating things, but like just go outside and look up at the clouds, just for one of those little joy breaks.
Yeah.
Things like that. So,
I love looking at the Texas sky.
mhm. Mhm.
And in Florida also, I miss the Florida sky.
I grew up on a peninsula, so I was surrounded by beaches and the ocean and mountains. So it was
Oh my
just
gosh.
gorgeous. And yeah, just going there and being able to look out at the water and hear the waves, like it's heaven.
I bet. Yeah, I used to live in Colorado in the mountains there, Pikes Peak.
Mhm.
There's just something about all that scenery and so
Yeah.
therapeutic.
Yes. Yeah. So find some nature around you and yeah, get out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, if you had to give somebody who is really struggling and in that dark space right now some advice, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I'm not a mental health professional or
Sure.
clergy. So if you're in crisis right now, or you know someone that does, dial 988 if you're here in the States, or get some type of
Or
help
text it.
immediately. Yes, you can text it as well. Very, very important. People are there happily to take your call, to, be there for you. And sometimes people just need somebody's presence,
Mhm.
somebody there to just hear them out, or to just sit there with them. And actually, that's my husband, he was a soldier, and that's what they recommend to them is just sit with somebody, and you have to watch them for 24 hours. And usually the following day, they'll feel a little bit better, and then they'll get professional help. Um, but so it depends on what level you are. You
Mhm.
could be in the pits of despair like I used to be. And I'm not sure what could have helped me at that time, except, prayer and God. Um, but happiness, I saw a YouTube video, and there's this monk lady that said happiness is a choice.
Yeah.
So how can we choose happiness at this moment? And for me, the way I see it now is that I tried it that other way and I didn't like it.
Mhm.
You don't have to live under darkness and gloom and all of that negativity. It feels much better to be on this side. So, even through the pandemic, my joy strategies really helped me. And one of my go tos was a picture of my little baby nephew doing that.
cross-eyed, sticking his tongue out.
Yes, it's just something so simple as that. Just find something simple that will bring you joy. Even just breathing, taking deep breaths, feeling yourself in your own skin. And this was one of the things that my psychologist actually recommended is if you're washing your hands, feeling the water on your hands, feeling the clothes on your body, feeling yourself sitting on the chair as you're taking steps, being very conscious of those steps that you're taking. And something really, really simple but powerful is gratefulness.
Yeah.
What can you be grateful right now? Whether it's little, whether it's something big.
Mhm.
And that's another strategy that I tell people is remember all those things. I feel like I have to apologize that I keep going back to the Bible.
No, it's okay.
But in the Bible, God encouraged the Israelites to build these monuments every time God showed up for them.
Mhm.
So it's important to say, oh, wow, look at this awesome occasion, this wonderful thing that it just everything worked out, and keep track of all those things because then you can go back and say, aha, I've been in this situation before, and guess what? It worked out.
Right.
I know it's going to
Yeah.
work out.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Document the good things.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today, Violet. I thank you for your courage and your vulnerability for sharing your story. And yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Janet.